Hi guys. Uh, we will make now the live stream with Mahayogi, and I'm trying to connect him. Just a minute. Okay, we are waiting for him. Today we will continue to talk about Ram and Shiva, and we have some new information for you. Oh, here's Mahayogi. Hi everyone again, and here's our Mahayogi professor, Mahabharatgods and Heroes professor, and today we will talk about Shiva and Ram. And we want to reveal this story more than in our book. And the main question: what is the position of Shiva in Mahabharata, in this our story, and this story how he gave the eggs to the Ram? This is the first our question.
He gave eggs to Ram.
Eggs to Ram.
But
yeah.
Ram did not eat eggs. Ram is not eating eggs. You say he gave eggs to Ram.
Okay.
Oh, you mean axe? He gave
eggs.
The axe.
Yes.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a good story. Anyways, it's good to see you, Kirti. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm nice.
In Ukraine. Yeah. How did he give the axe to Ram? Well, it's an interesting story, but we were talking a little bit before about how it is that Ram is a Brahmin, but he's also a Kshatriya. So that's kind of an interesting point, because there's a conflict between the intellectuals and the warrior class, always, right? The poets don't agree with the kings. The spiritual people don't agree with the power people. There's a kind of a conflict there. So according to the legend, it was Parashuram's grandmother. Her name was Satyavati, but this is a different Satyavati. And she married this rishi, Ruchika. So she's told the rishi, listen, I don't want to have warlike children because I come from a Kshatriya background. So can you do something? And the rishi, he had a little sacrifice, and he made some sweet rice, like a potion, if you like. And he's told his wife, you drink this potion. This is good for you. And the idea was, if she drank the potion, her son would be a Brahmin. But, you know, in all the stories, the mother-in-law always gets involved. So the girl's mother said, wait a minute, that's really good stuff. I want some. I can still have babies. So they fought over the potion, and somehow they exchanged potions. There was one for a Brahmin and one for a Kshatriya. And Ruchika, the rishi's wife, took the potion that was meant for a Kshatriya. So when he came home and discovered, oh no, that means your son will be a warrior, she was very upset. And she asked the rishi, can we make the curse, if you like, jump one generation? And they said, the rishi said, okay, we'll make it skip one generation. So your son will be a great Brahmin. And he became Jamadagni, the father of Parashuram. And in the next generation, Parashuram was a Brahmin, Kshatriya Brahmin. He has a very conflicted kind of personality, which is always interesting.
Okay, but I have a question about why exactly Shiva gave him the eggs.
Why did Shiva give him the axe? Well, at that time, there's a conflict between the Kshatriyas and the Brahmanas. And there was a despotic king named Kartavirya. And his name is Kartavirya Arjun, but this is a different Arjun. And Kartavirya was terrorizing the Brahmin community at the time, and he invaded the ashram of Jamadagni. And there's different accounts. According to one account, he steals the Sarabi cow. Another account has it that Jamadagni gives him some resistance, and so he's beheaded by the army, perhaps by Kartavirya himself. There's different accounts because some people today, they worship Kartavirya Arjun. Also, in the Bhagavad, in the 9th canto, Jamadagni appears before Parashuram and he says, why did you do this? Why are you so violent? So how can he do that if he was beheaded? So the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Purana differ on a couple of details, but the idea is the ashram was invaded by Kartavirya Arjun, and Kartavirya Arjun stole the Sarabi cow of Jamadagni. The Sarabi cow has these miraculous properties that it can produce any quantity of milk or any quantity of soldiers or anything else that Jamadagni wanted. So this terrible person, Kartavirya, comes and he kills Parashuram's father, right? At that time, his name is not Parashuram. They call him Jamadagneya, which means the son of Jamadagni. But he's very upset, so he goes to the Himalayas to meditate and to solve his inner spiritual crisis. And within him awakens the spirit of the Kshatriya. Before this time, he has more of a Brahminical nature, but he awakens a kind of militaristic nature, and he understands, I need to get revenge. So he goes further into the forest and prays to Shiva. He invokes Shiva, hoping that the powerful god Shiva will give him weapons. And as a consequence of that, his prayer and sacrifice to Shiva, after some time, it bears results. And Shiva appears riding on Nandi the bull and asks him, who are you? And he kind of adopts Parashuram as his own for some time and trains him in the martial arts. And he shows him how to fight with a sword, how to use a bow and arrow, and he awards him with different weapons, among which is the axe of Parashuram. And this axe, we don't know what happened to it, but it has mystical powers. It's something like the hammer of Thor. But you'll find that in the graphic novel.
Okay, but you mentioned that Arjun Kartavirya was not a very nice person, but now some people, they're worshipping him, yeah?
Yeah, that's true.
But why?
Well, we tend to worship powerful people, don't we? Look at Trump. Lots of people worship him, you know? So later, Jamadagneya, the son of Jamadagni, appears with full war apparel, weapons, and he goes up against he's supposed to have 1,000 arms, Kartavirya Arjun. Now, we don't know if that means that the word arms also means weapons. So maybe he has 1,000 different weapons, right? But there in the Mahabharata, the idea is he actually has 1,000 physical arms. So he's kind of a monster. And he's killed by Parashuram, who cuts off all his arms and then kills him. And returns, in some accounts, he returns the Surabi cow to Jamadagni, who's still alive. And in other accounts, he finds the head of his father and brings that back and gives Jamadagni a proper burial. But why would you worship Kartavirya? Well, he was a powerful king at the time, and in those days, people identified the king with God. So he was a godlike figure with thousands of arms. People worship godlike figures with thousands of arms. So today, you can go to a place in India where they have a temple for Kartavirya Arjuna, which is kind of curious in the handling of different personalities in the Mahabharata, because over time, anyone who's mentioned in the Mahabharata becomes kind of a sacred figure in India with a temple dedicated to them. So one of the problems of creating a graphic novel is to develop characters who are sympathetic, but either good or bad. People relate to good characters and bad characters and heroes, heroes and villains. So Kartavirya Arjuna is definitely the villain of the piece. He's got 1,000 arms. He beheads the old, wise Brahmin, Jamadagni. In many ways, this is representative of the conflict between Brahmins and Kshatriyas. And you can take that metaphorically to be a comment on the conflict between thinkers and doers, or between men of power and men of thought. So
Okay.
people always worship men of power, right? You like powerful men.
Okay, one more question about a little back to Shiva, and the question is, what is his position in Mahabharata if so many persons, so many characters from Mahabharata was worshipping him and tried to get help from him, like Amba was worshipping him to revenge Bhishma, Ram was worshipping him to get some power to protect his father and Brahmins. Why is Shiva not some other god?
Okay, well, this is really a good question. In the Upanishads, it is said, Om Purnamada Purnamidam, Purnat Purnam Udachate. Take the infinite, okay? Divide the infinite by itself. What do you get?
Infinite.
Right? You're an architect. Let's take a number, 10. What's 10 divided by 10?
1.
Good, right? Any number divided by itself gives you 1. But what about the infinite? What do you do? If you divide the infinite by itself, what do you get? So that's a difficult question. Really, it's a paradox. Infinite is an imaginary number, but can you wrap your mind around that? No, you can't, because it's infinite, right? So if we're talking about God in the Mahabharata, which is really one of the subjects, we talk about God, we talk about Dharma. How is that to be understood? Well, you can say like this, that if you divide the infinite by itself, it's not diminished. It continues to be infinite. Infinite divided by infinite remains infinite. So then you're looking at personalities of Godhead. See, there may be a gradation in the different personalities of Godhead. If you look at personalities of Godhead, then you think, well, okay, the greatest, the best must be Krishna. Why? Because he's Bhagavan. He's got all 6 opulences. He's rich, he's famous, he's beautiful, he's intelligent, he's renounced. I forget the other one, right? But he's all powerful, right? All powerful, rich, famous, beautiful, intelligent, and renounced. He's got everything. So all powerful is not enough. For all powerful, there is Vishnu and Vaikuntha, right? So what's the position of Shiva? Well, the position of Shiva is given in different places in the Bhagavad Purana, also in the Mahabharata. It has to do with Mahavishnu and how this universe comes into being. So, of all the powerful aspects of Godhead, leaving Krishna aside for a moment. Krishna is reality the beautiful. He's the highest aspect of Godhead. Leave that aside. Vishnu, he's all powerful. Okay, how does he create the universe? So there's an expansion of Vishnu called Mahavishnu, and according to the Puranas, he lies in the Milky Way galaxy. It's just a milk ocean, but in practical terms, what is the milk ocean? You know, milk ocean in Hindu mythology, we're talking about the Milky Way galaxy, right? What's the difference? Milk, ocean of stars, Milky Way galaxy. So somewhere beyond the Milky Way galaxy, God creates the universe. How does he do that, technically? Well, the Bible says God makes the world in 7 days, but the ancient Hindu Puranas have a different take. They say there's this transcendental, metaphysical, all-powerful entity called Mahavishnu lying somewhere beyond the Milky Way galaxy. And his mystic vision, his glance, somehow mixes with what we know as material energy, which is what? Matter, space, time. This is an interesting thought if you just hold that for a moment in your mind. We know about physical objects, about space and time, right? The classic example is of a baseball player or a football player, if you like. He kicks the ball. How fast does the ball travel to the goal? That's physics. How do objects move in time? But what was there before time? There's a famous book by Stephen Hawking called Beyond Time or something like that. And he tries to trace the universe to its origin point before the Big Bang. But he's not successful because his conclusion is what happens before the Big Bang is not important. It's not a question worth exploring. But the problem with that question is it remains with us because you and I are conscious beings. We're thinking, living, conscious beings. What separates the living from the dead? What separates life from matter? That's not such an easy question that we can just ignore it. So Shiva exists on the border between life and death, between living and matter. The idea is that Shambhu is the name we have for this mystic glance of Vishnu as he looks into the universe. Now that's very theoretical. It's hard to really picture. But in India, there's a very simple way to picture that. And it's a penis sitting on top of a vagina, which is the Shiva lingam and the yoni. It's not a penis, but it is. In other words, if you think of the mystic glance of God as something living, active, and penetrative, and if you think of the material nature as something sort of dark and feminine and receptive, the yin and the yang, if you like, the lingam and the yoni are symbols of that. So, in a very broad sense, in a mystic sense, Shiva is the complete totality of spiritual energy as it's undifferentiated. Now, if you ask a common man on the street, what's your idea of God? That will be their idea. They'll say, well, there's some kind of force. I don't know what it is, but it's beyond the universe. Okay, Mahavishnu sits beyond the universe, and the force that emanates from his mystic glance as he casts his view in the direction of Maya, or the illusory energy, That's Shiva, his glance, his penetrative spiritual glance, which is really nothing more than a kind of force beyond the universe, undifferentiated spiritual energy. That's Shiva. Now, if you think with the common man that, all right, that's God, then Shiva is God. If you think along Vaishnava terms, where we think, no, if you have a personality and I have a personality, how can we deny that to a higher being? God is more than you. God is more than I am. Why should he have no personality? That's a very attractive idea, because no personality means there's no conflict. And we want peace. We want shanti. But the Vaishnavas have this idea that God also has personality. So that's represented in the Mahabharata by Krishna, the personality, Krishna. The undifferentiated power aspect of God is represented by Shiva. So when people want power, they go to Shiva. You don't ask Krishna for things. You stand in awe of Krishna or offer him your love. But if you need something, you go to that power, that force, which is Shiva. Now, Shiva has two aspects. One is that spiritual formless aspect that we were talking about, which is considered by many to be the best form of God to think about. And he has another aspect, which is his personality, because it's hard to grasp an idea. So the Shiva idea personified is this strange fellow who wears a deerskin, but he's covered with ashes, and he has a garland of skulls, and his hair is snakes, and in his hair he catches the Ganges River, because when the 1,000 sons of Sagar needed their ashes to be watered by the Ganges, Bhagirath brought the Ganges to earth, but the Ganges said, if I fall upon the earth, I will split the earth. You need something that will stop me. And then Shiva offered his head, and she said, I will split your skull. But when the Ganges landed on the head of Shiva, he trapped the Ganges within his divine hair, because Shiva is a very powerful spiritual person. After all, he represents that undifferentiated force. So in the Mahabharata, whenever anybody wants power, they go pray to God. They say, God, give me power. God, give me a weapon. And that's Shiva. They're praying to this force which connects consciousness with matter. And they're saying, give me power over matter. But in every case in the Mahabharata, they're defeated by Krishna. So what is the position of Shiva and what is the position of Krishna? I would argue that the position of Krishna is absolute, as he explains in the Bhagavad Gita, and the position of Shiva is a kind of absolute, but relative to the higher power. But I'm coming from the Vaishnava school, and those of you who read Bhagavad Gita in a different way are entitled to your point of view.
But Shiva is one of the greatest devotees of Krishna. Yes?
Yeah. It says Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu. This is, I forget if that's from Shankara, but yeah, in the end, that Shiva, who is representative of consciousness, if you will, knows there's something higher. If you think about Sat Chit Ananda, or existence, eternity, existence, and bliss, what is the highest aspect? It's nice to be alive, but to be alive without ecstasy, without ananda, that's not the highest outcome. We want something higher. We want the Ananda. So Shiva also, he wants the Ananda. He's got the Sat and he's got the Chit. But the Ananda can be found in connecting with reality, the beautiful, or Krishna. So Shiva also becomes a devotee of Krishna so that he can participate in that Ananda. That's why he's a great devotee. He knows the position of Krishna. He's considered to be one of the greatest devotees, at least in this material plane.
But a lot of people that don't agree that Shiva is a devotee of Krishna. They think that Shiva is the highest position of the god. But what we can say to these people, how we can talk to them?
Well, yeah, of course, because as I pointed out, if you analyze reality and you come to a very deep conclusion about reality, that material reality is not everything, and that spiritual reality exists. Once you come to that conclusion, you feel very fulfilled. You think, this is great, this is a wonderful conclusion. The personality of Godhead that represents that conclusion is Shiva. So naturally you feel, well, I can't get any higher. This is the best. But there's gradation in everything according to our perception of reality. There's evolution everywhere. There are higher things and lesser things, hierarchy. And so, as I said, if you think about consciousness as being absolutely the highest reality, then good, okay, you've realized the Shiva level. But again, if you look at the Mahabharata, and that's what we're discussing, the center of the Mahabharata is Krishna. The whole book takes place over 18 days, right? The battle of Kurukshetra. There's 18 parvas, right? And in the very center of that, there's the Bhagavad Gita with its 18 chapters. And in the very center of that, Krishna defines himself as the Godhead, and Arjuna accepts that. Why? Because he's showing himself to be supreme in terms of the pleasure principle. And so, if you think that Ananda is the highest principle, if you think that beauty is the highest principle, then in terms of Mahabharata and the spiritual lore that it contains, you come to the conclusion that the Krishna of Mathura is superior to the Vishnu of Vaikuntha, and that the Krishna of Vrindavan is the highest conception of all. Krishna lifts Govardhan Hill to demonstrate that beauty is above power. The beauty of Krishna in Vrindavan is more powerful than the old rain god Indra, who's trying to destroy Vrindavan with the rain. So, then again, my simple explanation here probably won't convince anyone, because there's a certain conflict between Shivism and Vishnuism in Hindu culture and mythology going back thousands of years. My point is simply, if you accept this criterion that beauty is the highest, then you must come to the conclusion that Krishna is the best form of Godhead. Otherwise, if you're happy meditating on the infinite absolute, then Shiva may be fine for you, but there's no point in arguing with people and creating dissension and trying to convince them that, oh, you worship Shiva, I worship Krishna, Krishna is better than Shiva, because you won't get anywhere with that kind of argument, you know. Carnegie said the man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. So there's Tarko Pratishta Shrutaya Vibhina. This is saying that Tarka, or argument, is inconclusive. You can argue for the infinite, and I can argue for zero. The Buddhists like zero. They say, no, no, you're wrong. 0 divided by 0 is 0. Hey, how about that one? 0 times 0, that's also 0. But that's the Buddhist point of view. The Buddhists say, well, your idea of consciousness is nice, but it's just an illusion. It's all an illusion. Come to enlightenment and you realize the illusion, and Shiva doesn't exist, Krishna doesn't exist, the world doesn't exist. Curiously, that point of view was discarded. It was entertained for over 1,000 years in India, but later they said, no, we don't like this point of view. We prefer the idea of consciousness. And Buddhism, powerful as it is, never really returned to India. Buddhism exists in Sri Lanka, but the people of India prefer the argument between Krishna and Shiva. We prefer the idea of Shiva and the idea of Krishna. But the lingam and the yoni are very powerful. It's hard for people to give up the linga and the yoni, the idea of the spiritual power penetrating the physical universe. It's a very beautiful idea. We say maybe there's something beyond that, beyond the idea of a sort of raw spiritual force. We like the idea of Krishna and Vrindavan with Ananda. It's a sweet idea. So our point of view is different. I don't think we're in a position to convince other people. I don't know if I answered your question.
But I like this idea that the beauty is over the power. I think it's a very beautiful idea.
Yeah, this is a beautiful idea. It's really the culmination of the different philosophies that you'll find in the Vedas and the Upanishads. The Vedas are very sketchy. They talk about gods, the need for sacrifice. There's a vague idea about the creation. People weren't satisfied, according to tradition. Vyas created the Upanishads to give a more philosophical perspective. People found that to be vague. Vyas, or someone else by the same name, created the Mahabharata as stories so that we'll understand that. Still wasn't enough. Then the Puranas were given. And out of all the Puranas, the one singular Purana that has the best, most powerful thesis is the Bhagavad Purana. And that's why thousands of years after all these different scriptures have come into being, the Bhagavad Purana and the idea of Krishna continues to be popular today. So I like that idea too.
I have to interrupt you, sorry, but we have a question the second time. Terminate Halala sent our question. What are your thoughts on ISKCON?
My thoughts on ISKCON. ISKCON stands for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. This was a mission and an organization founded by my guru, who was His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, in the 1960s, with the idea of trying to help people around the world understand more about this particular Vaishnava point of view, or Krishna consciousness. So, insofar as the current organization is continuing to promote the precepts of its founders, I think it's a good thing.
Okay, nice, thank you. Maybe we have some more questions from our... Pratik asked when we can ask our questions. You can ask now. If you have some questions, you can ask now. And we will try to answer them one by one. We don't have a lot of time, but we will try.
I can't see the questions, but Kirti can see the questions. So we're here in real time. This is live. We're coming to you live by the miracle of the internet. And we're here discussing a graphic novel that we recently published called Mahabharatgods and Heroes. It was conceived by Avadut and executed by Igor Baranko, who did the artwork. And I contributed to the English in the first book. I was the editor of the English in the first book. I'm currently working on the second. So if there's any questions out there, you can put them to Kirti.
But people was asking, but don't send any question now.
But we have no questions.
We have
no, there's no curiosity. Really? You know,
I don't know.
life means questions.
Oh.
Life is struggle. You must have
What is, oh, we have a question. What is the idea behind Shakti known Rama? Is she a shadow representation? Is Mahamaya?
You have to put your question more slowly, Kirti. Or
what
move
is
your
the
face
idea?
up. I can
What
see
is
your
the,
lips because I
okay.
can't see. I'm hard of hearing.
What is the idea behind the Shakti known Rama? Is she a shadow?
What?
What is the idea behind the Shakti known Rama?
I don't know Shakti known Rama. What is known? Shakti known?
Yeah, it's a question. And is she a shadow representation? Is Mahamaya?
What's the second part about Mahamaya?
I think is this Shakti known Rama is a representation of Mahamaya.
I don't understand Shakti known Rama. It doesn't make sense to me. Shakti is one thing, Rama is something different. Shakti known, I'm not sure what you're trying to say there. Mahamaya. Mahamaya is the personification of material energy, okay? Also called Shakti, also called Durga, also called Mother Nature, sometimes Prakriti. There's a very powerful concept that runs as a thread through all Hindu literature, mythology, if you like, and that's the idea of Prakriti and Purush. Prakriti is the feminine aspect, Purush is the masculine aspect. So in this sense, Shiva is Purush, and Durga or Shakti is Prakriti. So sometimes the material energy is called Shakti, which means energy, and Shiva is the powerful. So it's a tough distinction to really work out the difference between the powerful and the power, but you can think of the sun and the sun ray. It's a very good example. The sun ray is the emanation or energy of the sun. The sun is the power. So in the example that I gave before, Shambhu is the powerful spirit, if you like, that impregnates the material energy. So if you can go back to it's a strange metaphor for Western minds to get into, but if you look at the Shiva Lingam, there's, I don't know, a stone phallus, if you like, that sits on a stone receptacle, right? And the metaphor is that of the phallus of spiritual energy entering the womb. And the combination, so it's very difficult to work. How does spirit enter matter? How does matter combine with spirit? Mm-hmm.
We have few more questions.
What?
Yeah. Are you finished with this one, or you have to say something more?
No.
No. It's interesting question. That's why I want to ask. Can we consider Brahma as a supreme god as he created the whole universe?
This is sort of a separate question, all right? My talk was about Ram in the story, who is Parashuram. Parasha means the axe, and Shiva. So we're trying to get an idea of the relationship between spirit and matter and how Shiva is representative of undifferentiated spirit. The mechanism by which the world comes into being, we can say, is presided over by another divinity, and that person is Brahma. But Brahma's position is more relative. He sits atop the lotus and conducts the evolution of the planetary systems within the divine lotus. So you can think of that lotus metaphorically, because if you look at the planets and how they spin around the sun over time, they describe the figure of a lotus in their orbits. If you just look at a stationary view of the planets in a line, which is what they teach you in the elementary school. You see, okay, here's the sun, there's Mercury, Venus, the Earth, Mars, extending out in a line like that. That's a convenient way for us to think of the planets, but the planets are in motion, aren't they? And as they describe an orbit around the sun, if you look at that orbit in a time-lapse photo over 100 years, even a few years, it describes a lotus, right? So the idea that there is a powerful intelligence guiding and directing the evolution of reality as we spin in time around the sun, that's Brahma. But his position is relative. His position is more involved in the material creation than that of Shiva. Shiva is a far more mystical personality.
Okay. We have many questions, and
Good.
I'm trying to
I'll try to give short answers.
pick the next one.
Okay,
we have one question which I think I will answer very quickly. It's a question about who's the artist of our app. One of our main artists is Igor Baranko. You can find more information about him in our Instagram, and we will make very soon some interview with him. That's why I think it will be enough now for about Igor. The next one question, very interesting question. Please tell me how you know about Hinduism, because here in India, Christians are destroying Hinduism.
Oh, well, that's a good question. I'm an old man now, my friend. Thank you by the way, thank everybody for your beautiful questions, and thank you for inviting me to say something. I'm an old man, but when I was a young man, I went to India. In those days, we had the Vietnam War, and as young men and women, we began questioning authority, and we saw that in those days, the Christian society was promoting a war in Asia against the people of Asia. And I didn't like that. We used to listen to singers like Joan Baez and Bob Dylan, who sang, where have all the flowers gone? And, the answer's blowing in the wind and things like that. And I found, particularly Joan Baez, I liked her. She was really beautiful. She was interested in the work of Gandhi. And there was an anti-war movement, and the anti-war movement was interested in the work of Gandhi. There was a civil rights movement led by Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King believed in the precepts of nonviolence that were being promoted by Gandhi. So I thought, who is this Gandhi? And I wanted to read more. And I found that Gandhi based his ideas of nonviolence on some books by Tolstoy. I was studying Russian at the time in high school. I thought, well, this is cool. I read Tolstoy. And then I found Tolstoy was reading the Bhagavad Gita and also the works of a man named Thoreau, who liked nonviolence. And then I read a book by Thoreau called Walden. It's about simplicity. And I found that Thoreau was reading the Bhagavad Gita. So Gandhi, Tolstoy, Thoreau, everyone's reading the Bhagavad Gita. I thought, I have to find out what is this book. And I used to see the Hare Krishna devotees on the street corners chanting Hare Krishna and beating their drums. And I thought, these people are absolutely crazy. Maybe they smoked too much marijuana, they took too much LSD, they lost their minds. But I found they have this book, the Bhagavad Gita. That's the book I'm looking for. And I read the book. It's a very fat book. I have it on the shelf behind me, actually. And I thought, this is amazing. This book explains everything. You know, the Christian Bible doesn't explain what the soul is or how karma works, or they have a very simple idea about the creation, that everything was made in, 6 days by God, who had to rest because he was angry with Adam and Eve. And as soon as they came to earth, they had a flood and they had to get in the boat with Noah's Ark. And then Jonah got swallowed by the whale. This is ridiculous. But the Bhagavad Gita gave me hope. It gave me comfort. And so I went to ISKCON. Somebody asked earlier about ISKCON, and I joined the International Hare Krishna movement in 1970s, and I went to India and spent some time there. So after living in India for about a year, I came back and I was working with the publishing company, the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, who produced the Bhagavad Gita for a few years, and then went back to India and started working with a friend and godbrother of Bhaktivedanta Swami, author of the Bhagavad Gita, whose name was Sridhar Maharaj. And in the 1980s, we established a printing press and began printing translations of books. I learned some Bengali and some Sanskrit. And together with my friends, we published a number of titles. But what I found was the world was very materialistic in the Clinton 80s and in the 90s. And our press went broke. I came here to Mexico and began working as an academic at the university. And then recently, about 7 years ago, I was contacted by an old friend who said, there's this man in Russia who translated your books. And really? Who's that? Avadut Maharaj. Oh. And I discovered that there's these communities all over the world reading the Bhagavad Gita, reading some of the books that we printed, and it gave me heart to continue. So now, in my old age, I'm taking this up. But I've been interested in, Hindu mythology, if you like, or the Bhagavad Gita for over 50 years now. I hope that answers your question. I'm sorry to take so much time.
No, it's okay. But we have one more question. It's a question for both of us. You have already answered it, and people want to know where I was involved in Sanatana Dharma, in Hinduism. And I can answer that I was found by my spiritual master, Bhakti Bimala Maharaj, in Kiev on Veda Life Festival, which he organized every year in Kiev, Moscow, USA, in Thailand, and I was, captured by these ideas and by his personality, and I think the best decision in my life was to follow him. That's why I'm here on this live stream, and he's the main inspirator of our Mahabharata project. Yeah.
Yes, I was invited to that festival, or a couple of them in Kiev, in Moscow, in St. Petersburg, and in Thailand, and Bangkok, in the United States. And there's a new sort of joyous energy moving through the world that's inspired by this current that flows from India, maybe from the Ganges. The Ganges is a celestial river, and it can touch all of us. So I don't think that the message of India is restricted only to the people born there. I have a strong sense that it's a universal message because it's appealed to great philosophers and writers from Schopenhauer and Hegel and Thoreau to the present day. So anyways, I'm very pleased to be able to participate in the Mahabharata project. And let's take another question if you have one.
Yeah, we have. We have. Are Vishnu and Shiva devotees of each other?
Well, that's a kind of a good question. Let's say they're friends. You know, Bhishma and Shiva, or Bhima and Shiva? I'm sorry, Bhishma. Did you say
No. Vishnu. Vishnu.
Vishnu? Are
Yeah.
Vishnu and Shiva friends, devotees of each other? There's many places in the Mahabharata where you'll find that Vishnu is showing attention and proper respect to Shiva. Shiva has his special divine place in the Mahabharata, in the mythology of India, and in the teachings. And Vishnu always shows respect to that. And as we've already said, Shiva is a great devotee of Vishnu. So yeah, let's say they're friends.
Okay. One more. If God is one, why Abrahamic religion is worst you can see when you compare dharmic religion.
Kirti, I have a problem with my hearing.
Okay, if God is one, why
Kirti, it helps me if I can see your lips.
Okay.
You're so close. Sit down.
Okay. If God is one, why Abrahamic religion is worst you can see when you compare dharmic religion?
If God is one,
why Abrahamic religion is worst you can see when you compare, I think, with dharmic religion.
Abrahamic? Did you say?
Abrahamic religion is worst you can see when you compare with dharmic religion.
I don't know what that means. A Brahmic religion is worst when compared with a karmic religion. I don't really get that. Karmic religion,
Abrahamic religion compared to dharmic religion.
I don't know when you say Abrahamic, are you talking about Abraham, like that? Or are you saying Brahmanic?
I don't know. It's a question.
Karmic religion is interesting. If you think about spiritual practice, and remember, I was invited to talk about the book and the graphic novel, so I thought I would be asked about, the particular stories that are found in the Mahabharata. Now you're casting me in the role of theologian, but the idea of karmic religion is an interesting one. The point is, you have your spiritual life, your relationship with divinity, whatever that might be, and that would be personal. And then there's what we call religion. And karmic religion in particular means that your religion has some relationship with action in this world. Karma means action in the world. So karmic religion really has to do with your function in society, right? that will be defined differently according to the society in which you are born and in which you participate. And you'll find that you can do some things in a particular society, but if you do those in a different culture, you'll go to jail or you'll be considered crazy. If you paint your head with tilak, for example, as they do in India, you can't maintain a job at the university here in Mexico because you'll be identified as too strange. See, in India, you can wear tilak and people know, okay, well, that's a sign, some kind of a religious thing. But here in the West, if you wear tilak, they think you might be a terrorist. So according to the norms of your society, how karmic religion works out is a very relative thing, just as karma is a very relative thing. So you have rules and rituals for marriage. They're very different in India or in Ukraine, right? So karmic religion is really, in a sense, society consciousness. It's not so much God consciousness. God consciousness has to do with your particular inner relationship with God. Now, your practice or the ethical means by which you demonstrate your spiritual sense will differ from one place to the next. So we can call that karmic religion. Brahmic religion, I'm not really sure what is meant by that, but let's take it on for a moment.
Sorry for interruption, but some people, they're trying to notice that Abrahamic religion, maybe it's Islam, Christianity, Judaism, and
Okay.
Dharmic religion, it's Hinduism, Sikhism, Buddhism, Jainism,
Right.
and other.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah, I was getting
of this
to.
question, it will be easier for you to answer.
Yeah, I can't see a text. So the
Yeah.
word Brahmin in India, it means something. Abram, we don't say in English, we say Abraham. You know, Abram is a little bit more Kievan or Russian English. Right. So Abrahamic religions mean, for example, the book, the Bible, the Quran, and the Muslims, for example, they recognize the book, the Bible, the people of Abraham, or Abram, as you're saying. So that means the Christians, the Jews, the Muslims, they have a very different idea about religion than that which comes from India, right? So your question was, what is the relative position of karmic?
I will try to find this question again.
Yeah, the
Here
question
is
is
a lot of questions, and if God is one,
right.
if God is one, why Abrahamic religion is worst? You can see when you compare with Dharmic religion.
Yeah, well, I don't know that it's worst. You know, I think you're making a value judgment there. But Abrahamic religion, as we see it, is monotheistic. Okay? But that's not the only characteristic of Abrahamic religion. Western religion also recognizes original sin. And that's an interesting concept, the idea of Adam and Eve and original sin. Eve tempted Adam, right? Am I right? Eve told Adam, eat the apple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what does that mean? It means that women are bad. Women are temptresses. Women are the cause of original sin. Now, that's a very basic precept in Abrahamic religions. That's a current of misogyny that runs from Christianism, Catholicism, Judaism, Muslim religions, Islam. Women are temptresses. And, you may argue against that, but I'll have some pretty good arguments on my side as well. There's the very story of Adam and Eve and the woman as temptress who teaches the man to accept the apple from the devil. Well, That's a powerful current in Western religion. Another one is original sin. Because of the sin of Adam and Eve, we have original sin on our souls. What does it mean? It means that all men and all women are originally bad. We have original sin. And that goes to like motive and cynicism. It's very easy to be cynical if we believe from the beginning that everyone is naturally bad. But that's not a tenet of Sanatana Dharma, as at least as I see it, or as my Guru Dev saw it. We see the Atma as pure in its original state, but the mirror of the soul, if you like, has been covered with dust. We can't see ourselves clearly because of the dust of karma and the dust of sinful activity, if you like. So we hate the sin and not the sinner. The sinful activity has made us unable to see purely what the light is. We're obscured by darkness because we've turned away from the light. It's not exactly the same thing as saying that you were born with sin on your soul, and the only way to free yourself from sin is through Jesus or through right activity as prescribed by Sharia law, or just a moment, or by following the proper religious practice. So in that sense, Sanatana Dharma, or the conglomerate of what we call Hindu beliefs, from Shivaism to Vaishnavism to other different ideas, they're very, very distinct. We're not saying that women are innately evil. We include the concept of the feminine in divinity. The yoni is part of the Shiva lingam. So these are very distinct ideas. So your question is, if God is one, why do we have all these different ideas? And I would say it has to do with a conflict between God consciousness and society consciousness, that you take a divine idea or a divine revelation, a mystic sense of God, and then try to disseminate that within a community. And you find different people are very good at carrying that idea, and some people are a little weaker. They're not as expert. We're all flawed vessels. So divine revelation becomes dogma, and that becomes a kind of a societal norm or social religion, as we were saying before. I'm getting a lot of phone calls.
It's
That's
okay.
my phone plays Beethoven's Ninth. But, right, so what we're saying is the idea that we can live together well by following some rules is a very human idea. But how those rules become codified and solidified into religion, how religion becomes ethics or law, and then how that law becomes corrupted by lust, anger, greed, pride, illusion, envy. It's the story of humanity, but we can't blame God for that. You can't say God is responsible for the sins of man. You're turning things on its head. We have freedom to conduct ourselves as we will. If from time to time there's some kind of divine revelation, as we see in the Mahabharata, where we get a clear idea of what Dharma is supposed to be, and then we make all these rules, and then we play games. How can I change the rules? How can I make? We have an election. All right, but how do I know that you really voted this way or that way? Well, we have a piece of paper. What is the paper made of? What kind of ink did we use? You get into the trivialities of enforcing laws, and you find well, people get driven by sex, money, power, greed. You can't say that's religion. So some people say, oh, religion is the root of all evil because, you know, you're a Hindu, I'm a Muslim, you're a Catholic, and we're all fighting, and it's because of God. I think that's a shallow view. I think that a more robust intellectual honesty will permit us to go deeper.
Okay. I think it will be the last question for today. Because
Thank you all for your questions.
oh
You know,
my God, I missed one second. 1 second. There
okay.
was so many. I missed it. Oh, yeah. I want to ask you, Master, our karma depends on what? Life or previous life?
I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble with my camera there. Karma, what? Say again?
Our karma depends on our life or on our previous life?
Well, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he says it's very difficult to understand karma. You know, what is karma? What isn't karma? What karma am I producing now? It's very hard to work out. So the idea is try to get off the karmic wheel. You know, we say that by developing an intense spiritual practice, you can free yourself from the karmic wheel. So yeah, in this lifetime, try to do something to get yourself out of the karmic wheel. We call that samsara. It's the wheel of birth and death. So are you suffering something in this life because of your karma from the previous life? Or is that a consequence of a decision that you made recently? It differs. I can't give you a universal answer. You know, if we sit down with a cup of tea and talk about it, we might come to some deeper conclusions. In general, we can say that perhaps your birth is determined by karma from your previous life. What you do in this life may determine what happens in your next life. But so there's freedom of action. It's not all predetermined. I can't say that I shot this man. I committed murder because of some karma from my previous life. That's not fair, right? But still, it's very difficult to understand how much are we reacting to phenomena from our previous life.
Okay. Thank you.
That's it. All right. Thanks a lot. It was very
Thank
nice
you. Thank you
questions.
very much.
I hope
I think it was a great live stream for today, and I want to say to our audience that don't hesitate. You can send your questions, and we will answer them on the next live stream. We will be prepared for questions. Yeah, and thank you, Mahayogi.
All
Yeah,
right. Thank you
it
very
was
much.
a great stream.
See you
A
again.
lot of great questions. Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you for your questions. We'll see you again next time.
Yeah. See you.
Bye-bye.
See you the next time. Bye.
Adios.
Dandavats.